My name is Lucas Oliveira, and I am an investigative journalist. Since I was a child, I've always been drawn to strange stories. No one can quite explain ghost towns, mysterious disappearances, legends whispered in the shadows. I grew up devouring books about the supernatural and watching documentaries that tried, often unsuccessfully, to unravel the impossible. When I became an adult, I decided to turn that curiosity into a career. I worked for small newspapers, neighborhood magazines, and even some questionable websites, covering everything from unsolved crimes to alleged UFO sightings. But absolutely nothing prepared me for what I would find in Eldoria. It all started on an online forum I frequented during sleepless nights. It was a dark corner of the internet, full of conspiracy theories and poorly written accounts. An anonymous user posted something that caught my eye. A town called Eldoria, lost somewhere in the Brazilian interior, where, according to him, visitors entered but never left. He didn't provide details, just a warning: if you go, take a rosary. You'll need it. That stuck in my mind like a splinter. I dug through digital archives, talked to colleagues, and even consulted old maps. I found little Eldoria had been founded in the early 19th century by settlers seeking isolation, a kind of refuge amid dense forests and steep mountains. Over time, it became a legend. Some said it was cursed, others claimed it never truly existed. I had to know. I decided to go there. I carefully packed my backpack, canned food, water, warm clothes, a compact tent, my Nikon camera, a digital recorder, a laptop, and a printed map of the Regent cell signal would be a distant dream out there. Before leaving, I told my family. My mother, Donna Clara, grabbed my arm tightly and said, "Lucas, please, don't go. I have a bad feeling." I smiled, trying to reassure her. "Mum, it's just a story. I'll take some pictures, interview a few locals, and be back in a week." She shook her head, but let me go. My younger brother Pedro just laughed and said, "If you see a ghost, record it for me." I laughed too, but deep down, I felt a shiver. The journey began in my old blue sedan, a car that had taken me to strange places and returned intact, at least so far. I left early in the morning, the sun still shy on the horizon. It was a 6-hour drive, passing through tiny towns where I stopped to refuel and chat with locals. At a crumbling gas station, I met Jose, an old man with weathered skin and sunken eyes. While he filled my tank, I asked if he'd ever heard of Eldoria. He paused, stared at me for a long moment, and said, "I know it, yeah. My friend Miguel went there about 10 years ago, chasing some gold mine they said was nearby. Never came back. No letter, no sign. If you're going there, kid, be careful. That town swallows people." I thanked him, made a mental note, and drove on. Jose's words echoed in my head, but I pushed them aside. It's just a story, I thought. As I neared Eldoria, the world changed. Wide roads turned into narrow trails, asphalt gave way to gravel, and the forest around me grew denser, almost suffocating. The sky, once blue, was now grey, blanketed by heavy clouds. A thin mist began creeping along the ground, as if the earth itself were breathing. Then I saw it, the gate, a rusty iron structure, bent and half open, like a hesitant invitation. I drove through slowly, the car's engine humming low, and entered Eldoria's main street. The town looked like an abandoned set. Rotting wooden houses lined both sides, their roofs collapsing, windows shattered. Closed shops displayed faded signs, Z's Bakery. Donna Maria's general store. There was no sound, no birds, no wind, just a heavy silence that pressed against my ears. I parked in front of a 2-story building with a crooked sign, "Travelers Inn." I stepped out of the car, the mist now thicker, clinging to my boots. The air was cold, even though it was midday. I entered the hotel. The lobby was small, with a dusty wooden counter and a torn sofa against the wall. I rang the bell, and the sound echoed like a scream in the void. After a few minutes, an old man emerged from behind a curtain. He was thin, with sunken eyes and a grey beard that reached his chest. "Welcome to Eldoria," he said, his voice raspy, as if he hadn't spoken in years. "You're the first visitor in a long time. Any rooms available?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He nodded slowly. "Plenty. Stay as long as you like." He handed me a heavy key engraved with the number 7. I thanked him and climbed the creaking stairs. To my room. It was simple, a single bed with yellowish sheets, a wobbly table, an empty wardrobe, and a tiny bathroom with a cracked mirror. I dropped my backpack on the floor and decided to explore the town. I left the hotel and walked down the main street. Up close, the houses looked even sadder, their half-open doors revealing dark interiors. Old cars, covered in dust and rust, sat on the sidewalks. Then I noticed something odd in every window. There was a framed photo of a smiling family, but they all looked old, faded, as if taken decades ago. Who were these people? Where were they now? I reached the central square. In the middle stood a moss-covered statue of a man in a cape, with a nearly illegible plaque, "Elias Montenegro, founder of Eldoria." I sat on a bench to jot down some notes when I spotted a woman nearby. She was young, with long dark hair, wearing a warm coat. I approached and asked, "Do you live here?" She looked up, her eyes sad and distant, and replied, "My name's Clara, but you shouldn't have come. No one leaves Eldoria." I laughed, thinking it was an exaggeration. "What do you mean, no one leaves?" She didn't smile. "Try to leave, you'll see." Her words carried a weight I couldn't ignore. I decided to test it. I returned to my car, started the engine, and drove to the entrance gate. But it was closed now, locked with a thick chain that hadn't been there before. I tried forcing the lock, but it wouldn't budge. I looked back, and the road I'd come in on was gone. In its place was just forestall, dark trees, as if no path had ever existed. My heart raced. I returned to the hotel, and the old Mano, introducing himself as Mr. Silverwise, waiting in the lobby, tried to leave. "Huh?" he said with a crooked smile. "I warned you. No one leaves Eldoria." "How is that possible?" I asked, my voice breaking. He leaned toward me, the smell of mold wafting off him. "The town is cursed. Long ago, the founder made a pact with forces you wouldn't understand. In exchange for protection, Eldoria traps everyone who enters." I wanted to laugh, to call it nonsense, but the memory of the vanished road silenced me. I decided I needed to learn more. In the days that followed, I explored Eldoria. I spoke to the few residents I found, all with vacant stares and curt answers. Clara told me she'd come looking for her husband, who disappeared 5 years earlier. She searched for months before realizing she was trapped too. Another resident, a young man named Pedro, was more forthcoming. He had brown skin, messy hair, and an easy smile, but his eyes held something dark. "There's a way out," he said quietly as we drank coffee in an empty diner. "A secret tunnel in the cave to the north. But it's dangerous." "Dangerous how?" I asked. "Creatures. I don't know what they are, but I've seen them. Red eyes, shadows that move fast. I wasn't sure if I believed him, but it was a chance. I convinced Pedro to take me there. The next morning, we headed to the cave. The path was steep, covered in loose rocks and exposed roots. The tunnel entrance was a narrow slit, reeking of damp rot. I turned on my flashlight, and we went in. The walls were smooth, almost polished, and the air grew colder with every step. Then we heard a low growl from the shadows. Before I could react, something lunged at us, a thin creature with glowing eyes and sharp claws. Pedro screamed, and I hit it with my flashlight. We fought, hearts pounding, until it retreated. But Pedro was injured, a deep gash on his arm. I brought him back to town, bandaged his wound, and demanded, furious, "Would you take me there if you knew about that?" He looked down. "I wanted to see if you were brave. The tunnel's not the way out." It was a test. I was speechless, but couldn't give up. I kept searching for answers. In the town's libraria, small building smelling of old pottery, found dusty books about Eldoria. One mentioned Elias Montenegro, the founder, had discovered a crystal in the forest, an ancient artifact with supernatural powers. He used it to create a barrier around the town, but the cost was steep. Anyone who entered was trapped. The book said the crystal was still there, hidden in Elias's mansion. I went to the mansion on the hill. It was massive but in ruins, with broken windows and ivy climbing the walls. I entered through the front door, which creaked like a whale. Inside was a maze of dark hallways and rooms full of sheet-covered furniture. As I searched, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Mr. Silver, but he looked differently, more menacing, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "You shouldn't be here," he growled. "The crystal is Eldoria's heart. Destroy it, and you end everything." I ran from him, climbing rickety stairs to the attic. There, I found the crystal, a glowing stone pulsing with blue light. I grabbed a hammer from a nearby table and prepared to strike. Mr. Silver appeared at the door. "Don't do it. It'll kill us all." I hesitated, but I thought of Clara, Pedro, and everyone trapped here. I raised the hammer and smashed it down. The crystal shattered into 1,000 pieces, a wave of energy throwing me against the wall. Mr. Silver screamed and dissolved into smoke. The mansion shook, and I ran outside. Outside, Eldoria was crumbling. Houses turned to dust, the mist lifted, and the residents vanished like mirages. The gate was open. I ran to my car and drove non-stop until I reached home. I told my family everything, but no one believed me. They said Eldoria was just a legend, but I know the truth. I still hear voices at night calling my name, as if the town hasn't fully let me go.